Welcome to Catholic Messenger Conversations. Today we're meeting with Bishop Thomas Zinkula, and I wanted to ask you about what's on your mind about youth and young adults. You've been getting together a lot, especially with confirmation students and synod listening sessions. I don't know how much you've done synod listening sessions with young people, but I wanted to at least start with, what are some of the common themes emerging from your listening sessions with confirmands in their parishes?
Right. So I actually don't do the listening session because I don't have time.
Okay.
But so they do that ahead of time, and then I get the results, and because I only have like half hour or so, 20 minutes, half hour. So they've had the listening session, which is good. Then the church will hear what they have to say, right? It'll be part of what we hear and part of our summary. So it's good for them just to do that, no matter what, whether I'm part of it or not. So I have their kind of their statements, what fills their heart, what breaks their heart, and then I visit with them about that. In terms of common themes, like if it was me kind of talking about what fills my heart about the Catholic Church, I would talk about the sacraments. I would talk about our Catholic intellectual tradition. I would talk about our Catholic social teachings and how we're there, with the poor and the common good and all that. I would talk about the saints. I would talk about our mystical, spiritual tradition, monks and monasteries and nuns and different ways to pray. That's
right.
Richness there. I would talk about our ritual, using all five senses and the arts, pulling in the arts, music and stained glass and all that. So they talk about that a little bit, those kinds of things, but mostly they talk about community. I mean, in one way or another, a lot of times they use that word, but otherwise it's just like, welcoming, coming together, to worship and this and that. Sometimes it's 75% of what fills their heart is somehow related to community. And what breaks their heart is the flip side of that, the dark side of that, where people aren't welcoming or people are judging or, they'll say people not coming to Mass. That comes up. And I'm like, you guys go to Mass, every weekend. But so they recognize, especially with COVID and people not going, and just in general, younger people starting to drop out. And so that's, I hear a little bit about other things, but that's a huge thing. So I think about, well, why is that, right? So
is it because of the age group they're in? Your teenage years, you're already dealing with struggles with people accepting or not accepting you. Is that part of it? That's so important to have community?
Sure. Yeah, I'm sure that's definitely a part of it. But also, I read about surveys and studies and research that people are doing on young people because it's, I'll ask them often in our conversation, what do you think the median age is when somebody basically turns their back on religion or, they walk away from their church or maybe even God or, faith? Median, so half are younger and half are older, and they guess, and it's 13. So
wow.
So then, we talk about I wasn't mature enough to make that decision when I was 13. I didn't know enough about the church. I didn't have enough life experience, wisdom. So to make that, because what they're hearing in the media, and it's all, like negative things out there. So I study that, and I talk to them about this. They're the loneliest generation ever. We're a lot of it. There's more people living alone now in our country than ever before. So it's not just young people, but more and more families break up and marriages and just people moving a lot more and not having that extended family and kind of a thing. So they're lonely. So community, duh. They want to belong. If you surveys, they want to belong somewhere, but they diss institutions. Not just churches and religion, but all of them, because there's human beings involved and they're messy and these guys are idealistic. And so here's a place they can belong, but but they want to. There's anxiety, depression.
Yeah.
I mean, that's in our culture. That's increasing. All ages, especially with COVID, but especially with young people.
Yeah.
So there's, there's all that is like, I want to be part of something bigger than myself, and they're looking for truth. They in our culture these days, it's like your truth is your truth, my truth is my truth, and it's all relative. And they want something to grab on to, have to figure out, a value system for yourself, or what you believe, or what's right and wrong. That's no wonder there's anxiety and depression and and stuff. But we have something that they can grab onto that's solid and objective, but they walk away from it at 13 or young. Half of them younger than that. Like, imagine that. Young, they can't make an informed decision. About something so important. So anyway.
Well, it's interesting when they say community. So what if they're not attracted to institutions like what they consider the church to be? What kind of community are they looking for? Something where they can belong. But what does that look like? Is it family? Is it small faith groups? Is it? I mean, and is it all about inviting them to be a part of it?
That's
they have
the question,
to have friends.
Barb. That's what I know. We need to figure it out. That social media isn't cutting it. Obviously,
No.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's artificial. It's not. You'd think that there's all kinds of community going on because of social media and the internet, but it's not doing it for them. I don't know. I don't think they probably don't know what they're looking for.
Well, when you're talking with the confirmands for that half hour, do you go over their statements that they've made, or do you kind of talk with them about what you've read that they've just said and ask them a little bit about that,
Yeah,
or what?
It depends on I don't know, the group and the age and just whether they're willing to engage, because it's like the bishop and it's like they just shut up, Like,
Yes, I was wondering.
God, I'm like, I'm just this farm kid who became a priest, who became a bishop. It's like, I look at when I say, okay, this is all about community, I'll read some of their statements, and it's like it's just all over the place.
Right.
And it's just and then the other side, here's where community isn't present. That's what breaks your heart. So,
and what do they say when you're in that half hour session? Do they say much about what they're thinking about at that point?
Not so much. They don't. I don't know if they don't have time to process that. I don't think so quickly.
Oh yeah.
It'd be interesting to know what they would say later.
That would be interesting.
But part of it is, they're not going to say much to me anyway.
Right.
It's so quick. You don't have a chance to establish relationship and trust, and it's just this.
But you think it's important to meet with them ahead anyways. Why is that so important to you to meet ahead with them as opposed to just, when I was confirmed, I didn't have a clue who the bishop was. He just confirmed me. That was it.
Yeah, I don't know why. I don't know. It seems like rather than see me for the first time when we process into the church, you can't get a lot done in a half hour, okay, but at least you establish some kind of rapport. And it's, it's lighthearted. And and sometimes sometimes I can engage them in the last questions, and they'll talk about, just me and my story, or being a bishop, or something with regard to the church. More often they don't, though, because they're just intimidated,
That's right. So they don't even really ask you questions then, do they? Or?
Yeah, no, sometimes you can have a conversation. More often it's me talking to them. And I, at this point, I don't even talk about confirmation. They've studied that, and, I just evangelize. That's all. I'm just talking about, I speak very directly about, okay, probably some of you guys aren't really excited to be here, and you can tell it sometimes, just on their faces and how their body language, and I want to try to give them something to think about, and I end up sometimes saying, give God a chance, give the church a chance. We talk about all these things I just talked about, and how important faith is, and if you're wrong on this and making a decision when it's not informed at 13 or whatever. My goodness, that's a huge effect on how you're going to live your life. Whether you're, with it's from a intentionally faith-filled perspective, because you're part of a community, a church, and or you go off some other path. It might be fine, but it won't be as what it could be. That so I just want them to think about it and if, know what you're saying no to. I always say that kind of a thing, and just put it off. Fake it till you make it.
Right. Well, and it's not necessarily permanent, is it? I mean, if they're saying no at 13 or 14, it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be for the rest of their lives.
A lot of times it's hard to get them back.
It's harder to get them back.
We always say that, when they get married, and
but that's not happening.
Well, it can. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but you're going to lose a lot more if you hope that they'll come back and versus trying to keep them in, and put off making a decision about faith.
But I'm thinking about the people I met, the young people at the Newman Center. For example, you were at that Newman Center gala in Iowa City, and those young adults are so on fire about their faith. They're so committed. Some of them are going to daily mass. What's the difference? What is it that sparks? But I talked to one young woman, and she said her roommate in freshman year was going to daily mass, and because they're roommates, she decided to go with her, and that just
everybody has
sparked. And
so some of them had drifted away, and some of them do come back, and I'm not carte blanche about that, and some of them have never really were actively involved in a faith tradition. Maybe they were Catholic, but they never really practiced too much. And then who knows? That's the question. How do we connect with young people? How do we attract them to the faith?
But it looked like they've found their place. They've found a sense of community. Several of the people I talked to talked about the sense of the community that they feel at Newman Center.
So obviously they're there, and they're here too at Ambrose. But it's. And once they get it, right? And they're committed, but that's a small group.
Right, that is a small group.
There's lots more Catholics there at Iowa than that group that you were in.
That's a good point. Can you talk about any of the unusual or unexpected comments you've heard from the confirmands, whether it's in their written statements or something they've said to you?
I mean, the one I remember that was funny is this kid. Whoever summarized it just put down what each of them said, and this kid said, "What breaks his heart is having to participate in this survey."
So
here it's like, isn't this wonderful? The church wants to hear from you, and in his thing was he's being, kidding around, but I don't know, maybe there's some seriousness there too. But yes, that was great, having to do this thing, having to tell the church, what fills your heart and breaks your heart. Now, I would say, in terms of comments, you asked about comments I heard, I would say I found it interesting, maybe unexpected, what I didn't hear.
Oh, okay.
I heard very little about women priests, very little about clergy sexual abuse. Actually, not a whole lot about LGBTQ issues, climate change, racism, immigration, different devotions that people have, that wherever they're at with that kind of a thing. I didn't hear much about that at all, which is very interesting. Like adults, we're going to hear plenty about that kind of thing.
Right.
But with those guys, I don't know, is that because, it was anonymous, but because their teacher was doing the listening session, or, I don't know why that would be exactly.
Is there kind of an average age range for those confirmands, mostly like 14, 15?
8th grade to 10th, could be 11th, but more like 8th grade.
So it could be even, just where they're at in their
probably
in their understanding of the world or their focus on issues.
Yeah, probably. But you'd think you'd hear some.
Yeah.
About that. I mean, I do hear a little bit, but very little. So it's probably that's part of it, I'm sure.
I was just wondering, how about were you able to talk to? Do you get a chance to talk much with university students? Have you had any kind of synod conversations with younger adults?
They've had a lot of them here with at Ambrose with the students and then faculty staff a lot, and Dr. Novak she's found it really powerful experience. Very
that's
powerful
great
experience. might want to talk to her about that.
I was just going to say, we need to have her on this podcast to find out what she's
and they want to follow up on it and do something with it. And she herself facilitated a number of them, and others as well. So it was really good what their experience here. But I wasn't a part of any of those.
Okay. And then I was just wondering, now, how do you respond to concerns that, well, you actually had conversation, didn't you, with some young adults, with some of the U.S. bishops not too long ago, I think in April, if I'm not mistaken, and they talked about Laudato Si and some of the other issues that are important to them, climate change?
Right. So there's this thing that Loyola University kind of got going. They hooked up with the Synod group at the USCCB, the U.S. Bishops Conference, and they identified some young people. Most of them, I think, were from Jesuit colleges and universities.
Oh, okay.
And then they had I think there was like groups of them, and then like a leader of each group or spokesperson who then had this online listening session with the Pope. Maybe, I don't know if there's like 20 or so. And so then after that, it's like, hey, let's do that with some bishops from the United States. And so I was part of that. There may be, I don't know, maybe 10 or so bishops, and each of us had.
How did you get to be a part of that? Did you someone ask you?
Yeah, somebody just asked me. So there were we each had 3 or 4 students.
Oh, okay.
And the ones I visited with were 2 of them from Creighton and 1 from St. Louis University, and the one from St. Louis University is from a parishioner at St. John Vianney in Bettendorf, interestingly, and Enrique, and then the other ones were Henry and Emily. They had their thing was, I mean, we talked about a lot of things. We talked about the Synod. We talked about stuff that we're doing at the diocese. They had done some homework, and they kind of knew what was going on here. At least Henry did. But their big thing was climate change. That's
right.
That is their passion about it. Very passionate about it. So we talked a lot about that. And
did they talk about other issues, or was it mostly focused on the climate change and what their concerns are about?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about a number of things, but mostly it was about climate change. And so I listened to them and shared, my thoughts on things, and they wanted to have another session. So that was all that thing that with the bishops that was done, but then they just wanted to follow up on that on their own. So we had another visit last week, and this time they're very organized. They had an agenda, and in terms of what they wanted to cover, 3 points. It was kind of fun, interesting and funny in a way, but great, So they one thing was they invited me to. One of them works for. He has an internship this semester at Catholic Climate Change.
Catholic Climate Covenant.
Catholic Climate Covenant in Washington. It's my old seminary. They there's extra rooms there, so they ran it out, and so. So he's all over that, and he knows what's going on with all this stuff. He wanted me to join this Catholic Climate Covenant group of clerics. Like there's a bishop who was a year ahead of me at seminary, in that building where the Catholic CCC is located, and so he's like the Episcopal moderator. And then they mentioned him, and they mentioned this priest who's a rector at of a seminary in Baltimore, and they mentioned their names. I'm like, I know both those guys. They're a year ahead of me in seminary, so I know them both very well. So they invited me to be part of that group, working with that. So I said, fine. Secondly, they want the diocese to consider pursuing a net zero pathway, which means zero emissions by 2050.
Wow!
So kind of challenge, putting that challenge out there. And they had some resources. They had some resources to share with me that I could share with our staff, and they know that we signed up for that to be part of the Laudato Si action platform thing, right, and all that. And I didn't know they knew this. I didn't know that we were the third diocese that signed up for that. I had no clue.
Oh, okay.
So they were impressed by that we jumped on that.
Yeah, because Atlanta was one of the dioceses, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's huge.
Yeah. But anyway, so they're willing to help me with this stuff. And then the third thing one of them, Emily, I don't know, maybe you saw this in the press. There's a group of students who did some research to see what bishops had written on climate change.
Yes.
And they very small percent. They looked at newspapers and different things, and they there were limitations to their study because they didn't homilies and everything else.
Oh, that's right.
They just here's what they looked at, but still, it was a very small percentage. So they want me to issue a statement on climate change or a column in the paper on climate change. So I said, okay, I'll do that, but will you guys help me with that? They offered actually
to
help
cool.
me and I'm like, okay,
sorry.
They're talking about young people. This is for a lot of young people, this is a big issue.
Right.
So if we want people to stay in the church, that's what we're talking about this afternoon, then we need to we need to be involved in things that they care about.
Exactly.
So not everybody's as passionate about climate change as these guys are.
Right.
But so, okay, well, I could write from the perspective of an old geezer bishop, or give me what would make the case for you. I mean, what would be compelling to you in terms of how I say this, what I say about it. So, hopefully I'll hear from them.
That'll be interesting. I suppose they're thinking because you are the bishop of a diocese, it just has perhaps more clout or more.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
More persuasive.
Oh, for sure. That's why they want it's not just me as the bishop of our diocese, but also the bishops of the U.S. They want us to grab onto this thing more.
Right. Because we talk about bringing young people into the church, but I sat in on a Catholic Climate Covenant webinar, and they talked about how the bishops are focused on religious liberty and the abortion issue, and those are huge issues, but not so much the issue of Catholic or climate change or care of the earth that the young people are very, very concerned about.
Yeah, well, yeah, and young people, a lot of them are.
Right.
More so maybe than some as a group than some older folks. But yeah, I mean we're right now we're Eucharistic revival. We're all focused on that, and that's it's not just religious liberty and abortion. And abortion right now, the Dodd's case, we've got to be looking at that.
Oh,
obviously.
Sure, yeah.
Immigration, we're all over that. I mean, it's there's a lot of things that we're dealing with. So, but granted, we haven't done a lot with climate change, and I would agree we need to do more with that. So, it's one thing to talk about the bishops as a whole, but people talk a lot about local, things happen at the local level,
right?
Subsidiarity
Exactly,
and all that. That's maybe as important or more important. We are looking at climate change here. We have this Laudato Si thing we're talking about, action platform. We're have transgender committee. We're doing things at the local level. Where I have the most control. I can't control the bishops' conference. I'm just one voice.
Right.
But that's why they want to have this group that are working with the Catholic Climate Covenant of bishops and priests and things. So.
And those are kind of planting seeds, aren't they? I mean, I was talking with Kent Ferris about the Laudato Si platform, and that takes time to shape that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not ready to roll out yet. Right. This is like a 7-year plan.
Right.
So maybe people
thing.
are a little bit. We're in a 24/7 culture where everybody's thinks, hey, this has to be done now. This has to be. So is that part of the challenge too?
Yeah, for sure. It's a huge thing. And, they're talking about the bishops. Okay, well, there's priests, pastors out there who, that's a lot of they have to be on board with this. and
Right.
experience conversion about it, and other leaders in that, in the parishes and things, for us to say, okay, here's what you're going to do. It's a huge thing to change hearts, and then there's this whole divisiveness, and you're either on this side or that side,
Right.
and so it's a big challenge. But granted, I would agree, we haven't said a lot that I've seen from the bishops' conference itself, and there's just so many things, and you can make excuses for that, but yeah, we need to do more. We need to say more.
Right. So how are you responding? How do you plan to address concerns, issues you have heard expressed by our youth and young adults?
Well, so, we're involved in the synod, and we started out with that listening sessions, and that's what I'm here. That's these big, huge listening process that we've been involved in. Mm-hmm. So we've got data, and we're gonna right now the listening for our diocese sessions ended April 30th. So now we're pulling it all together. What are the themes? Kind of synthesizing things and coming up with our summary, and we're going to focus on what we've heard there. And it's that see, judge, act thing. Okay, we've been seeing, we've been hearing from the people, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to then judge, then discern what we've heard, and have come up with some process for that. I haven't figured that out yet, but we will, and then act. There's already our Laudato Si platform thing, so that's going to be something that's going to be part of this whole thing in terms of how we act, yeah.
But what I'm wondering is, you probably don't know at this point, I wonder what percentage of, say, people under 40 participated in these listening sessions.
I don't know at this point.
So that'd be interesting.
We tried to hear from young people. We just talked about Ambrose and everything. And,
so that'll be good to see.
And these confirmation classes, which I said they didn't say a lot about that, there, but yeah, So
you'll get so you feel like you've got probably a good, at least, overall.
I hope so. It's undoubtedly going to be on the older side,
mm-hmm.
In terms of the people who participated. I would guess a little bit lopsided that way.
Right.
But hopefully we have enough younger people and middle-aged people to have a valid, subset.
We will be talking about that in one of our conversations coming up, won't we? I bet, because you're going to be putting together the draft result of that, the synthesis of the synod listening sessions, right?
Yeah. It'll be really interesting to see what the themes are that we have a process for looking at all this data, all these things that people have said, and it's well thought out how we're going to pull that together and come up with themes and go from there.
I've actually been sitting in on that, and it's very interesting. It is really interesting to hear what fills people's hearts and breaks their hearts, and it really does make you feel like people really want to share. They want people to hear them, to know what matters to them when it comes to the Catholic Church, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've just read some, but just the raw data, the statements, that just reading that before it's all summarized, and it won't be it just comes across differently when it's there's more emotion,
Yes.
with somebody's statement versus you pull it together into a theme. But it does get you thinking about things, and that's for sure.
I appreciate that. Any other closing comments, or
no?
To be continued, I guess. We'll do that next time.
Right. We keep enjoying our celebration of Easter, the resurrection of the Lord, and spring, and it's all a great time of the year.
That's great. Thank you, Bishop.
Sure. Yep.